Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 7th of March, comes to you from London. And we'll start by looking at currencies, then stocks, commodities, stock markets, commodities, some US tech stocks, and last of all, we'll take a look at the Nasdaq scans I did last week. I bought 5 of these stocks last night. Just from the scans, so we'll just take another look at how those stocks are doing. So we start with the dollar index. It's just holding up. It's up just very slightly this morning. Lagging line didn't really fall below the cloud here, so it's quite interesting that in fact we didn't really turn bearish in the short term. I like to give a few hours grace, and the lagging line was or I say a few hours, a few bars grace. So on a weekly, that would be 3 weeks. On a daily, that would be 3 days. On the 60-minute chart, 3 hours. We didn't really fall below. We've held on to that. We've found support on the cloud. So we are still bullish, even though price went below the cloud, which is a bit of a warning. We really are bouncing off this short-term support. We see that is on the point and figure chart, that we are just constantly finding support on this this line here. So we've got upside potential of about 2 to 2.5%, and this 3% target that was given back in November still there for us. So at the moment, the dollar is still holding its strength, which means that the euro is potentially going to fall. But interestingly, we are above the cloud here as well. So it's a rare situation. Normally these charts are inverted in that they mirror each other. Dollar is bullish, euro is bearish, but the euro is still just slightly bullish on this chart, although we do have these downside targets hanging over us. And the long-term picture for the euro is still pretty bearish. So this 105 level is the critical level at the moment, and we're at 105.75 this morning. So just staying around that level, and we have been in the doldrums really at the 105, 106.25 level now for quite some time. We see here the last few weeks we've just struggled to break out of that. Look at the dollar yen. Dollar is rising again here as well, bullish on all three. Well, bullish on certainly on the daily and the short-term chart. Not quite yet bullish on the long-term chart, but it's not a bearish picture by any stretch. Looking at sterling at 122 this morning, just really nudging that 122 level. Looks like we might break that and go into the 121s. We've got downside targets to 121.16, 117.70. Sterling still looks pretty bearish. Looking at the euro sterling rate, we see again here sterling falling against the euro as well. And against the Swiss franc, we're down here too. Australian dollar 160.5, so not quite the lows we saw last week, but pushing down. The Australian interest rates kept on hold overnight, so that hasn't had a big bearing on the rate. Taking a look at the S&P 500 index, we see here we are still above the cloud, so that is still bullish on all 3 time frames. The Nasdaq also, we are bullish above the cloud, so that's also good news. We're just holding on to that bullishness there. Taking a look at the Dow, also still bullish. Shortage of upside targets, but the medium term looking pretty good. The Russell has just gone below the cloud, so the broader market looking a little bit more worrying. The S&P future down very slightly, down 0.38% today in London. So before we open in the US, looks like we might see a further fall in the market just opening. FTSE 100 is down slightly, but still holding on to the cloud, bullish above all 3 time frames. And this 7554 level is the level that we're looking at next. FTSE 250 is up and still above the cloud there as well. DAX is holding above the cloud, even though we're down just under 0.5% this morning. The Nikkei was just down 0.5% as well last night. We're seeing that on the short-term chart playing through, but we're still bullish on all 3 time frames there. Hang Seng was up, but just looking bearish in the short term, and the Shanghai index just holding on to its bullishness short and medium term. Sensex still bullish above all 3 clouds, looking good in India, and the Australian market rising just up 1/3% on that interest rate decision, and just moving back above the cloud short term. Crude oil sitting at this 56 level, just cannot break. It's been a really long sideways move now, really quite interesting there. So we are seeing that just getting back above the cloud, but it's such a choppy market at the moment. Until we break 157.50, it's really hard to call. And same with WTI, really. We're in this really range-bound market. Nat gas up 1.5%, so we're just seeing that short-term bullishness continue. Copper bearish below the cloud and making new multi-week lows, but still holding the middle of its range on the medium term. Taking a look at gold, gold is falling back quite a bit today. We're off nearly 1%, and we see that showing in the daily chart. A couple of bad weeks for gold. We are just pulling back here at the moment. We still have this upside target of 1287. That's the one to watch. If we fall below that 118 level, then we will start to deactivate these targets, and that would be a bit more bearish. But at the moment, we might see some buying strength coming in. Silver looking a bit more worrying, with downside targets and down 1.5%. US government bonds hit the magic 250 mark overnight. We're at 2.5% yield on 10-year Treasury. Apple was down slightly, but still bullish on all three charts. Google was also down very, very slightly. Amazon down 1/3%, but holding on to its bullishness as well. Facebook was up, stock I hold, making new highs, and also just multiple upside targets. I did actually sell some Microsoft last night, but did keep some of my holding. May need to invest some of that money in the scan that I did on the end of last week, and we'll talk about those in a second. And Nvidia I sold, having tripled my money on this one over the last year. I did just decide that there's too much volatility. We're bearish below the cloud, a lot of downside targets creeping in, just started to spook me here, and my stop loss was breached. So taking a look at the scans, there were 16 charts in the Nasdaq 100 list that came up in the scans, and I bought 3 of these. Now, and then I bought 2 from the wider Nasdaq scan. So out of these charts, it was a case of finding the 3 best looking charts. And that's certainly a good looking one there. That was Applied Materials. Automated data processing also looking pretty good, with upside targets on all 3. And Celgene also looking pretty good. A bit more of a recovery. I'm not as keen on these, but again, the upside targets are pretty compelling all round. And so it's just a case of deciding which 3. I wasn't happy with Costco in the short term. eBay also, just that short term downside was a bit worrying. We got downside targets on Henry Shen as well. Facebook I've already hold. Liberty Ventures, the liquidity here just showing up a little bit and really a bit stuck in a sideways and quite a big recovery mode here. Maxim Integrated Products again just a little bit bearish in the downside. Netflix below the cloud short term, and a bit of a concern that these targets were given quite some time ago. So just wasn't quite persuaded there. Seagate Technology looking good for a long-term recovery, but there is a downside target on the short term as well. Shire, we see here looking pretty good, except for that long-term chart. We're not quite through there as well. Priceline, quite a compelling chart, but we're just stuck a little bit here in a range as well. We have got some quite good upside targets, but just that range there, wanting to see that just kick probably before I'd be a buyer. And Vertex, much the same. And Viacom, just below the cloud there in the short term. And Yahoo has got quite compelling targets. The short-term chart looking a little bit mixed. So I bought the top 3 looking charts there, and then in my short list from the bigger scan, this was on the entire 3,200 Nasdaq. Go back and look at the scans I did at the end of last week to see how I arrived at these. This was 23 stocks out of the 3,200 full Nasdaq list, and it was just a case of choosing which 2 here looked best. I decided that I was going to buy the top 5. And so I bought 3 from the Nasdaq 100. This obviously includes some of those. The Nasdaq 100, we did a bigger scan for bigger upside, and here it's just a case. A lot of these were a little bit too illiquid. I did check the market cap on some of these, and I just decided that you can just see from the charts that some of these were just a little bit too illiquid for me. So it's just a case of going through each chart and seeing and looking at that long, medium term and short term picture. So for example here it's got quite nice upside targets, but these downtime short term targets, just a timing issue, wasn't really the right time for looking at those. Sage again looking pretty good on all three charts there, and Sinclair Broadcast Group has run a bit, but what a breakout when you look at that. So quite interesting there as well. And then the ProShares QQQ, Tesoro, and Yahoo came up again in that scan. So it was a case of choosing the top two from that list and the top three from this list, and that gave me my 5 stocks that I bought last night. I put equal amounts into each one of them. And I'm looking forward to seeing which one is the one that's going to do really well. Along the way, there will be some that'll, out of those 5, one will probably trigger a stop loss, but it's about running them and seeing which ones perform best. So have a look back at those scans, and I'll keep just referring back to them as we do charts today. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.